What is up, guys? Welcome back to another Dexter Resurrection video, and it's not Friday yet, so we're not talking about the new episode, but since we only have 2 episodes left this season, and it's pretty much guaranteed that they're going to be balls to the wall insane, I wanted to do a standalone video talking specifically about New York Ripper theories. Now, I've talked a couple of times in at least 2 of the episode recaps so far about certain ideas of who could be the New York Ripper, theories that I've heard, theories that I've seen, both ones that are compelling and ones that I think are ridiculous. And at this point, I just decided to look up every single theory that has been running around the internet for the last couple of weeks, and there are 13 different possibilities for who could be revealed as the New York Ripper. And so I figured it would be fun to do a little standalone ranking video where I just rank these ideas based on how much I like them, not on how likely I think they're going to happen or anything along those lines, just off of which ones I think would be the ones with the coolest potential versus the ones at the bottom that I think just suck as ideas in general. But for those that don't care about spoilers that are still going to watch this video, I'll briefly give a little context. So in Dexter Resurrection Season 1, about 4 or 5 times at this point throughout the series, there have been moments dedicated to mentioning this prolific serial killer from New York called the New York Ripper, who would literally pull people's insides out with this giant hook that I believe some people have identified as a manhole hook that like the FDNY or somebody would use. And if it had just been mentioned once, it would have been like just this canon little detail of some serial killer that didn't exist in real life but exists in this universe. But it's been mentioned so many times throughout this first season that it has literally become a Chekhov's gun, which is a screenwriting term referring to something that is introduced in the first, a gun that is introduced in the first act of a film that has to be fired by the third act. Otherwise, it's like this lingering hole. And that is what the New York Ripper has become. So as the series has progressed, many fans, myself included, have continued to look at certain characters, pick up certain context clues and details, and develop many different theories on who this character could eventually be revealed to be. And of course, when they're going to be revealed is the even larger question. With all that being said, we're going to kick this thing off with the bottom, which is number 13, my least favorite theory for the identity of the New York Ripper, and it's Joey Quinn. And this is number 13 because I think it is the absolute dumbest fucking theory that could possibly exist, that to me seemingly was only brought up for clickbait YouTube videos where somebody can put Joey Quinn's face on the thumbnail with like a 3-word little thing to the side saying, "It was him," in big bold letters to get fans of Dexter to click on and say, well, what the fuck is the explanation for this? The explanation is that he's from New York. That's it. Like he was a killer and then he came to Miami Metro after or some bullshit like that. There's absolutely zero sense to this theory. It would never make sense for the character. There's no chance in hell that that is actually going to be revealed. And I'm telling you right now, if it ends up being revealed, I will happily turn the camera on and say that I was wrong. And my God, Dexter Resurrection, what the fuck have you done? And honestly, the reason why it fires me up so much is because I think that this theory specifically kind of speaks to something that I think is frustrating about fandoms. Now, we all love certain shows and movies, and so we get ultra nerdy. And to me, it just feels like we're at this point where, I don't know if it's a result of Marvel and cameos or whatever happened, where in storytelling, a lot of fans just want everything to be connected, everything to be a cameo or some kind of a reveal or a twist. And it's like, guys, not every character in the Dexter universe has to have some kind of a twist reveal or a dark past or have something that's going to lead to some major twist in Dexter Resurrection. That's absolutely ridiculous of an expectation. And that would be absolute garbage storytelling if they decided to do that. Moving on to number 12, which is another idea that I really hate, but I don't hate it quite as much as Joey Quinn being identified. And that is that nobody is the New York Ripper. We're never going to find out. That this is not something they ever planned on being such a big detail that fans have focused on. They're not setting up the New York Ripper to be the big bad of the 2nd or the 3rd season of Dexter Resurrection. They're not planning some big reveal. It's just something that's a part of the context of these characters in this season, and fans have made a mountain out of a molehill, and we're all going to be severely disappointed and confused when Chekhov's gun never actually gets fired.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Now, is there a possibility that that can happen? I guess. But they've regained a lot of goodwill with me and a lot of my faith as far as the writing of this show. And so I like to think that they know better than to mention something like this so many times and have so many different things and Easter eggs and details laid out there to never pay it off. Coming in at number 11, we've got Claudette Wallace. This is the lead detective who has been pursuing Harrison and, to a certain extent, Dexter ever since the first episode. Not a huge fan of the character, although I have warmed to her a little bit since the first couple of episodes where it just felt like they were laying on some of the eccentricities, and very clearly they're trying to make her like some kind of an autistic type of representation for a detective, where she's got all these little quirks and things that she focuses on and things that she notices that other people don't, which they characterize in the first episode of, oh, hey, she noticed that there's some trash bags that have a certain knot. Like, how bad of a detective do you have to be to not notice that? Anyway, neither here nor there. Warming up to the character a bit, and I'm curious where things are going to go with her, but I think the possibility of her ending up being the New York Ripper, it just hasn't been set up properly at all if they're planning on doing that. Like, they have set that up to be the comparison, like the thing that she has in common with Batista, that case that she never was able to solve that haunts her. If she's just like the wolf in sheep's clothing and the reason she never solved it is because she's the killer, that just seems extremely silly and over the top to me. So I can't find any justification for that ending up being the identity of the New York Ripper. I don't think I would enjoy that one at all. Right above Claudette, we have her partner, who is named Melvin Oliva. And while this would be much more sensical than Claudette, because it's like she's been chasing somebody who's been standing right next to her for God knows how many years, and of course there's the plausibility that he could have fudged evidence or could have stayed one step ahead of the investigation because he is tied to the investigation. I just think that's too redundant of an idea for the Dexter universe at this point. I mean, you have Dexter himself that does that. You had numerous people at this point who have been tied to Miami Metro, like with the Patrick Dempsey's character in Original Sin. Like, this is something we've done before. So if they're doing all this slow, meticulous buildup to the New York Ripper just for it to yet again be a cop who's also a murderer, like, to me, that just feels like we've been there and we've done that ad nauseum at this point. Now we're doing it again. No, thank you. Coming in at number 9 is a theory that I had not considered, but I actually saw it on a little list today as I was kind of checking my my P's and Q's before I did this video, and Brian Moser apparently is something that a few people have theorized. Now, initially you hear that and you go, well, he's dead. That wouldn't be very satisfying. And I do agree with you. That's why he's this low. But there is some sense to the theory that Brian Moser, given Original Sin, has already kind of primed us to see that he killed people in a lot of different ways before he became the ice truck killer, that there might have been an era where he found himself in New York and did a whole bunch of killings, and then the killings stopped because Dexter killed him. Now, the timeline, which is going to play into a number of these theories, has been incredibly muddled and very unclear with the way that the show has presented it. There are people who have heard certain things characters have said and have taken it like concrete, that this is when the killings took place and it was years ago, decades ago, this and that. I think they have very deliberately been very vague with the word choices. Like when you had Prater say that the killer preyed on the streets that I played on as a child. I hear that and I think, okay, so he's preying on where Prater grew up, not necessarily when he grew up. Other people hear that and they think, oh, so he was the killer that was running rampant when Prater was a child, which is like 40 years ago. You also have the whole thing where Claudette has said that she has been pursuing the New York Ripper ever since she joined the force, and people are saying, well, she looks like she's about 40, so that should be about 20-something years ago. Nobody said she joined the force when she was in her 20s, or that she became a detective when she was in her 20s. You could still say that that was within the last decade, and they haven't really written themselves into a corner with that. So this theory really solidifying that or really paying into the whole theory that New York Ripper is somebody that was preying on New York a decade or two ago. That is one of the more interesting ones that I've seen for that. The issue is just that while it would be an interesting little reveal for Dexter and for him to find out something extra about his brother, is that would kind of die there. I mean, we're not setting up a new threat. We're not setting up any kind of a showdown with the New York Ripper because he's already fucking dead if he's Brian Moser. Coming in at number 8 is one that has gained a lot of traction since episode 7, when they played the little tape of the New York Ripper sending like taunts to the victims' families. And it's Sam Edelstein, who is the boyfriend to Blessing's daughter, who we've only seen, I believe, once at the party after the wake, where Blessing kind of loses his shit on him for the ice. And there's a moment where he gives like a little probiotic drink that he's developing to Harrison. And that is really, there's two reasons why people are theorizing him. One is that his voice does sound similar to the voice that was on this tape that that Wallace displayed to this college campus. And also because he had the little probiotic drink and he's seemingly obsessed with gut health, and the New York Ripper pulls people's guts out. Now, I think that's pretty murky. I don't think that's solid enough for me to completely buy into this theory, but there is some validity there. The reason why I don't hate the theory, because we don't know enough about him. He could end up being a great actor with a really sinister performance the more that we get to see him. I don't like it because it's a character that we don't know and we don't have any experience with, and so the reveal wouldn't be that shocking, that impactful, and he just doesn't really seem... I get like brain surgeon vibes off of him, where it's like, don't just pick a guy and say that he's intimidating because you're telling me he is. So I'm not a huge fan of that theory. I think it would be a big letdown, but it's far from my least favorite. Coming in at number 7, we have Cooper Morris, and this is the guy that intentionally ran over Prater's mom and dad. So you have this conversation in episode 7 where Prater talks about kind of becoming a bit of a pen pal with his parents' murderer, and how his relationship with him was the first time he actually felt like he was heard, or like he was in company of somebody that is like him or understands him. And that's what's kind of spawned him to eventually pursue this little serial killers fight club thing going on here, where they're just telling each other stories and Prater gets the trophies and everything, is him trying to like rekindle that thrill or that adrenaline or whatever he got out of his relationship with the guy that killed his parents, who literally would just taunt him about it and say like, yeah, I did it on purpose and whatever. I'm glad I hurt you. And I understand that you're in pain. That's awesome. And so I've seen some people say, well, it's probably going to end up being him. And as like his final parting gift, when the guy died in prison or was executed, he told Prater the location of his weapon. And, there's possibly going to be a part B to this that I'll get to a little bit, later in this video. But what I like about that is that it does make sense. It does make sense that Prater would have this trophy of this New York killer, and that was kind of the big origin for him and what he has done. Even though he's not directly killing people, he's certainly like facilitating it and funding it in certain ways. And that would be interesting. It wouldn't be a very good payoff for what's to come, because just like with Brian Moser, the guy's already dead. So it's like, what version of Dexter pursuing the New York Ripper are we going to get out of that? None. And that's what I think most people want, is for that to be the big bad of the next season, as like this massive serial killer who's prolific, and now Dexter, the big bad motherfucker that he is going to finally take down this guy. So Cooper Morris would not be that, but at least the explanation for it makes sense to me on a narrative front. Coming in at number 6, we have Blessing. This is the very good-hearted, seemingly good-natured guy that took in Dexter immediately, basically made him part of his family, gave him a place to live, and until this last episode, episode 8, has only been friendly with Dexter. And this is a theory that's been floating around basically ever since people really started talking about the New York Ripper, just because I think he's the most unassuming, because he is almost overly friendly and overly nice, and wasn't even really that scared to invite Dexter to his house, even though there was a very solid chance he was the dark passenger killer who was taking out your car drivers. That was the justification for a lot of people, is that, oh, he doesn't care because he's a sadistic serial killer himself, and so he can take care of his own. And then eventually you get the explanation that he was a child soldier and he's got this darkness, and he doesn't want it bleeding into his family life, which is very much echoing Dexter's philosophy with a lot of things. So there are breadcrumbs, there are things built up, but I think he is just the most effective red herring. I don't see him being revealed as the New York Ripper. And, we're not ranking it based off of plausibility of it happening, but as far as it being satisfying to me, that feels too out of left field. It feels too much like a complete character switch. And while I have not loved the character of Blessing and his family, I think it's the weakest element of the season so far, next to Claudette Wallace. I just don't think him being set up as the next big bad and him having a big showdown with Dexter would be that interesting to me. I just don't think they've done enough work with the character that I've enjoyed and been intrigued with for me to really buy into that being anything more than just a red herring. Even the way that they left their conversation in this most recent episode where he's upset about Dexter kind of letting the cat out of the bag about his past, and he stares at Dexter and he's like, "You betrayed me," and then walks away all ominously. Again, I think that is a red herring. I think that that's them knowing a lot of us are waiting for the reveal of the New York Ripper, and a lot of people are going to go, "Ooh, it's him. See, he said you betrayed me. He's going to come after Dexter now." I guarantee it's just misdirection. Now we've arrived at the top 5, and coming in at number 5 for me is Charlie. This is Uma Thurman's character. Now, this is one that has certainly been, I think, another very effective red herring, because clearly she doesn't have any qualms with killing people. We saw that from episode 2 where she whacked the dude in the head with the spiked bat, and she's ready to take people out to protect Prater. There is some kind of a drama, some kind of a hold that Prater seems to have over her, seemingly paying for maybe her mother's medical treatment or something like that. So there's going to be some shoe that drops between these two characters, or maybe some kind of a character switch with Charlie, I think, in these last 2 episodes. I don't necessarily think it's going to be the New York Ripper, but what would be interesting about that and why I have it so high is that it's already been a very enticing idea for me to really crave the payoff, to have Prater come to the realization that the Bay Harbor Butcher has been, within his group this entire time. He's been infiltrated, he's been tricked, he's been deceived, and he's had, like, pretty much within the canon of this show, the most prolific serial killer of all time, especially given how most of his murders aren't even credited to him, because ever since Dokes has been taken out, everybody assumes the Bay Harbor Butcher killings have stopped. The realization scene, when and if that happens, is going to be magical. And you could have just as cool of a scene with that, or maybe even something that complements that, where Charlie reveals herself as the New York Ripper, and it's like, damn, dude, Prater, you suck. You've got the Bay Harbor Butcher infiltrating your shit and killing your people, and you've had the New York Ripper right there on your side the entire time, and you didn't even know it, which could set up some really sinister things with Uma Thurman. I think she would play a fantastic villain, by the way, which is also why it's so high. And there's also the possibility that Charlie's the New York Ripper and Prater knows, and that's one of the things that he has over her, and that's how he was able to get this weapon when the New York Ripper has seemingly never been caught, and even Claudette Wallace said they weren't ever really able to identify what weapon it was that he used. So that's one of the biggest lingering questions, is how the hell did Prater get this hook if not even the investigators knew what the weapon was? So I also think it's a very strong possibility that that's one of the reasons why he has a hold over her, is because he knows her identity. He's done something to protect her or to get rid of the evidence. Probably is also helping her mom. And he knows and she knows, like, if it really comes down to it, I can fuck your whole life up with one phone call. So don't fuck with me and do what I say. I think that's also very possible. And then coming in at number 4, of course, is Prater himself. And I think of all of the characters that I would lean towards thinking are probably just a very effective red herring, he's the one that I enjoy the most as a possibility to actually not be a red herring and be the reveal. Now, I think that they've done a lot of work in the character of Prater to set up things that very much have some parallels to the New York Ripper that would make sense. You have, of course, him saying the line of, "This is the killer that preyed on the streets that I grew up on as a child." It would make sense that he would go back to his old stomping grounds and start slaying people that he didn't like, or just randoms. You also have the whole thing about how the hell did he get this weapon if even the FBI didn't know what weapon he was using, and it's because he was the one using the weapon, so very easily can kind of excuse that whole thing away. And also, I think that, like I said earlier when I was talking about Cooper Morris and how this would loop back around, I think you could use Cooper Morris as kind of the origin for the New York Ripper rather than the actual identity, where this relationship that he had with Cooper Morris and whatever drive, whatever darkness that was feeding him from this relationship and this back and forth with this guy who killed his parents, when he eventually went away and was executed or whatever happened to him, that would leave this hole in Prater. And so to me, that would make sense as an origin of somebody. Now I have to go claim my own victims to try to get back that feeling that I've never felt before and I will never feel again because now my pen pal is gone. And so you have that as kind of an origin for his darkness. And then you also have that to me can be very much explained away with when Claudette Wallace was talking about how the New York Ripper just suddenly stopped killing one day, but he continues to leave voicemails and phone calls to taunt the victim's family. And that also plays into the whole thing with Prater needing to feed this urge and feed this darkness. And whatever he got, the feeling that he got from having Cooper Morris taunt him about the murder of his parents, he's essentially trying to do that to other people, either for his own gain or some sick, twisted way of feeling like it's going to make them feel better or something like that. It also stands to reason that because he stopped killing, because he didn't want to get caught, that he uses that as a way to somewhat trickle some satisfaction into his darkness, as well as the entire secret society of serial killers that he has built, where he's trying his best to live vicariously through these other people. He doesn't want to go out there. Now he's got this massive social standing, this grand lifestyle. He doesn't want to risk any of that, but he still has that darkness to feed. And so he's found people to go do it for him. And they bring him the tapes, they bring him the details of the story, they bring him the trophies, and that's enough for him to kind of keep the beast at bay, and then eventually leading to a reveal that it's him, and the beast will be unleashed for season 2, which I think just on an acting standpoint, having Michael C. Hall square off against Peter Dinklage for a whole season, there is some massive potential for some great shit with that might even be on the level of him versus John Lithgow. The only issue with this, and please do not take this as disrespectful, I don't mean it that way whatsoever, it's just the reality of the logistics here and how they're going to have to execute this, no pun intended. When you have somebody with the height and the stature of Peter Dinklage, you are going to have to do some serious work and have some very particular filmmaking to make it believable and not silly that somebody like that is swinging around this massive hook, taking out the citizens of New York. Now, I don't know if they're going to show backstory or a flashback to him if he's revealed, and they're going to show his killings if he's revealed, or is he going to have further killings, which I'd assume he would have to in season 2. I do think that logistically that does create some issues that could very, very easily, with the way that they film it and the way that they frame everything, could come across as ridiculous to some people. Now, that's not his fault. That's not Peter Dinklage's fault. He's a phenomenal actor, so it's a shame that that is the reality, but it is. So I think that's the only reason why that, aside from it just kind of being obvious, the guy who's kind of the figurehead of everything ends up being the big bad. It's not the most shocking twist in the world. So the obvious side of it, as well as the logistic issues of just how you present that, I think are the main 2 reasons why it's not likely to happen and why it's not near the top of my list as far as things that I would like to see happen. But narratively, I think they've done some really strong work, even if it ends up being a red herring, at setting up a satisfying red herring. Coming in at number 3 for me is something that I think I talked about in my episode 8 recap, maybe it was episode 7, as something that is starting to... if I was to rank things that are most likely to happen, this would probably be my number 1 at this point. And that is that the New York Ripper is nobody that we know, that they're not going to be revealed this season. It's not going to be a twist reveal. It's just going to be breadcrumbs set up to establish the threat that will eventually be revealed in season 2, and it's going to be a totally new character. And I think there's a lot of value to that because that is kind of the classic Dexter template. We don't usually set up villains in the season prior. Usually we're introduced to things in episode 1 of a new season, and I don't think there's any reason to completely mess with that. They tried to do it a little bit in season 6 with the nerd who was working with Masuka. I forget the character's name, but the guy that they basically set up to do some kind of a threat, and then they just literally killed him off like they didn't do any of that work. One of the weirder decisions of the back half of Dexter. So aside from that one time, we've never really set up a villain in a previous season that I can remember. And so I think there's validity for that reason. I also think just because of the amount of time we have left in this season, contrasted with the amount of stories that we still have to pay off or find a good stopping point to punt to next season, it might be too much for 2 episodes to handle to be able to do all that. I mean, you have Dexter in New York, his relationship with Blessing, his relationship with Harrison. You have Harrison's thing going on with his little, like, not really a love triangle, but two different love interests going on, as well as Harrison's murder and the investigation that Wallace and Oliva have been pursuing him. Then you have the detectives now kind of suspecting something about Batista. Of course, you have Batista pursuing Dexter, and now somewhat Quinn getting involved in that possibly. You have the whole thing going on with Prater and his little secret society of killers and whatever might happen with Charlie. I mean, there's so many things that they now have less than 2 hours to pay off or find a good spot to satisfyingly tease us with a payoff that's going to be next year, that having a big twist reveal of the New York Ripper might not be in the cards. And so this is one that, you know, there's some people that would say it would be unsatisfying, it would be anticlimactic to not get an answer this season, or to have it not be some big massive twist reveal as a character that we know and love, or somebody from Dexter's past showing up, or one of these new characters we've seen in Resurrection. And I do understand that. I think there's validity to that. But I also think that it would be satisfying, given the assumption that season 2 is awesome, to have all these storylines take the center stage and just have these little breadcrumbs in the background that you can theorize and have fun with. And then in season 2, we're going to have this brand new character who's now established to just be this twisted fuck that Dexter has to go against. So I like this theory quite a bit, this explanation here, this possible story direction. And as I said, if I was to rank all of them by likeliness, I do think this is my number 1. Now we have reached the top 2, and I will be honest in saying that I don't think the likeliness of these top 2 is very strong, but they are my favorite as far as narrative implications. And number 2 for me is going to be Cody Bennett. So Aster and Cody, the kids that Dexter had and then the show completely forgot about and wrote off of the show, and they haven't acknowledged at all since New Blood came back. The fact that Harrison has 2 siblings that Dexter never mentions, and he has no interest in ever crossing paths with them again, seemingly, is very weird. It's a very open wound that's lingering. It's strange. And so it feels like at some point they need to address that, whether or not it's this or not. But I've never read the Dexter books, but I do know some of the details about where things go and how it's different from the show. And one of the major ones is that because of the death of Rita in the books, Cody develops a darkness that is very similar to Dexter. Harrison in the show version kind of took the place of that narratively. And I do think that it is possible, plausible, and there would be a lot of interesting implications to have Cody be revealed as the New York Ripper. I haven't done the math on whether or not the timeline works out, and as I've said, the timeline is incredibly muddy with the details they've given so far anyway, but let's just put that aside. I don't think this is likely, but just put that aside, the logic side of it, the math side of it for a moment, and just think about what would happen in Dexter's mind and what would be set up for a second season if he finds out that the most prolific serial killer in New York and one of the most prolific serial killers to never be caught is a direct result of his mistakes, is a direct result of his failures to protect his family, most directly his wife Rita. And he is like basically abandoned Aster and Cody and let Cody's darkness fester into this horrific person, and sets up this whole thing where now Dexter potentially has to take out his, adopted son, whatever you want to call it, stepson, his son, for all intents and purposes, who would create difficulty with, or would create a lot of interesting drama with how he has tried to be with Harrison versus now how he has to face that he was not able to do that for Cody. Like, having Harrison have this darkness that Dexter is trying to help him deal with, and is relieved at the fact that he doesn't have the dark urge. He just kind of has a temper and can certainly go off the rails if he needs to. And everything that was set up in New Blood and paid off a bit in Resurrection, to now be faced with the son that you failed while trying to mend everything with the other son. I think there's a lot of really interesting story that could be mined out of that. And not the least of which is just what Harrison would think about all this. Like, holy shit, you're telling me I have a fucking brother that you never mentioned that has the same darkness that I have, that I struggle with every single day, and he was this prolific guy that now you're hunting? Like, what the fuck? No, we can't do this. We got to figure things out. We got to help him. Like, there's so many cool things that could come from that I'm really kind of addicted to that theory. Again, I don't know if it makes sense with the age of Cody and everything like that. Probably not. But the storyteller in me just really loves the explanations or the identities of the New York Ripper that's going to have the most narrative implications for our titular character, Dexter. But coming in at number 1 for me, which should not be any surprise to those of you that have been following my Dexter coverage, is Jonah Mitchell, the son of Arthur Mitchell, the Trinity Killer. And this is one that, you know, I've been pushing pretty hard in my videos as my favorite theory that is out there. It's one that I think, just like with Cody Bennett, has a lot of really fascinating and interesting and enticing narrative implications. And also, I just think it would be cool to see that actor come back and play a bad guy, because I actually really liked a little bit of a darker edge that he brought to Jonah in season 6 and that one little episode in Nebraska. But to kind of quickly go over the ties to this, although I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with the things that a lot of us have said about Jonah being possibly the New York Ripper, one of which is just paying off where things went in that Nebraska episode that felt like such a one-off that a lot of people actually hate that episode, but I really enjoy it, and I think it left Jonah in a really interesting spot that is, you know, in such a sympathetic spot that Dexter decided not to finish him off and to just kind of wish him well. And it's never felt like a storyline that needs to be paid off, but if they wanted to go back to it, there's a lot of potential there to get some more stuff out of it. Then, of course, what really kind of tipped me off is I was watching a season 6 recap video as I've been kind of like regathering my notes for when I'm eventually going to do another ranking of these seasons, because I haven't watched them in a little bit. And we got to the Nebraska episode, and it showed that image of Dexter kind of looking into the department store, and Jonah's holding that hook and he's slashing it down. And I was like, wait a minute, because I was already kind of wondering if the New York Ripper thing was going to be a big deal. And I was like, wait a minute, oh shit, I wonder if they're going to do that. That'd be really cool. And on its surface, that's not a lot. It's like, okay, he used a hook. Like, how many people use hooks like that? You're kind of reaching a little bit there. Admittedly, yes. But the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, so if that is the direction they're going to take this, what would be the narrative reason to do so aside from just, hey, look who it is? And the more I thought about it, the more I really started to get enticed by this idea, similar to how I was with the Cody theory, in the implications for Dexter as well, even more so really Harrison, where I'm thinking about, okay, if Jonah's revealed to be the New York Ripper and he's going to be the big bad for season 2, what does that mean for these two characters? Well, it means that Dexter now has to face somebody that he didn't create the darkness in him, his dad did, but Dexter could have helped him more and didn't. So in a way, he still kind of failed him. And just like with Cody, that would create the same kind of difficulty where he's trying to not be the failure for Harrison, and now he's facing somebody that he could have helped but didn't, or chose not to, or couldn't do as much as he needed him to do. And, you know, kind of left him to his own devices at the end of Nebraska, and now he sees the implications of that decision all this time later. But also, more so for Harrison, is that now you have this big bad and this threat that Dexter is going to have to pursue and try to resolve, whether it's killing him, saving him, doing something. And this is the son of the person that murdered his mother, that created his darkness. And so what kind of situation would that set up where Dexter's trying to maybe save Jonah or redeem Jonah, and Harrison is looking at Jonah as, this is my opportunity to kind of try to make things right. I couldn't kill the Trinity Killer, but I can kill this fucking guy. And so you have Harrison and Dexter on 2 different collision courses with Jonah. I think that could be awesome. I think there could be a lot of badass shit that could come from that. This was only like further fueled by the actor on his TikTok or his Instagram. He did a little quick video where he's like, hey, let's get back from New York. What's everybody yelling about? Very obviously just kind of having fun with the theory, and that's probably all that it is, but also could be him like winking and acknowledging like, yeah, I've been shooting. So who knows? I don't think it's likely, because you have to make a lot of, you have to do a lot of work to set that up. And while it would be cool narratively for the payoff, I just don't think, usually the simplest answer is the right one, and I don't think Jonah is a simple answer whatsoever. And then, of course, people have called out certain inconsistencies with the dates and everything, like I was talking about with a previous character with like Brian Moser and stuff. But again, it's so vague that I don't think it's concrete at all. I think they're very much leaving a lot of possibilities open so that people can theorize like this. So my favorite theory is Jonah Mitchell, because I just think that would bring things full circle with a Trinity Killer and Harrison. And as much as Cody Bennett would be a cool version of that, I think Jonah would work a little bit better for me. It wouldn't be quite as much of a stretch as Cody, this cute little kid, suddenly being this prolific serial killer, versus Jonah, who's the son of a serial killer, knows he's the son of a serial killer, was abused his entire childhood, and then was forced to murder his mother because of the suicide of his sister. Like, there's a lot of shit there that's like, totally believe him being a fucking psycho. So yeah, that is my number one. Now, if you're only here for the ranking, that is the end of the ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you continue to watch this channel, hit the subscribe button, everything for more Dexter stuff. We got 2 more episodes. Then I'm going to rank the season over, or review the season overall, like the whole picture, give an updated ranking on the seasons. I might re-rank a few other things, maybe do like my top 10 characters, top 10 episodes or something like that. But I got a lot of Dexter content planned. But there's something that I need to address. Now, I don't remember specifically what episode it was that I started talking about the Jonah Mitchell theory. I think it was episode 5. But that was when the light bulb kind of came on for me. And so I talked about it whenever it was first in my head. And I have since brought it up, I think maybe 2 more times. Every time they bring some new detail into the show about the New York Ripper, it's me like addressing the new information and tying it into Jonah as well as Prater and some of these other, what if characters and the plausibility of it all. I've talked about the New York Ripper stuff a couple of times at this point. And earlier this afternoon, my buddy Sean Chandler sent me this video and said, hey, this guy, gave you a shout out talking about the New York Ripper. And I was like, oh, cool. Let me check this out. It was a channel called Jerry's Takes. Jerry, if you're watching this, as I put in the comments, I appreciate the shout out very much. Thank you for watching. And in the video, Jerry was talking about all the various theories in the way that I am, not in a ranking, but just kind of in general. And when he got to the Jonah Mitchell segment, he said that idea originated from me. Now, when he said it, I just took it as he watched my video and that was the first time he heard that theory. Not that he was literally giving me credit, but nonetheless, the way that he said it, some people interpreted it as him saying that Cody Leach created this theory and he's the one that brought it to the internet. And it made me look in the comments section like, oh God. And I looked and I found like 3 or 4 different comments that didn't just say, hey, Jerry, just so you know, Cody didn't actually originate that idea. He even acknowledged that in his video. He just, he's got a bigger platform and you probably saw it there first, but there was, smaller creators or somebody, maybe even someone specific out there that said it a week or 2 before him, which would have been fine. But did they say that? No. What these 3 or 4 different comments all said was some variation of, Cody Leach did not originate that idea. He's just taking credit for it. And, he's got a bigger platform, so he's stealing ideas from smaller creators and claiming them as his own, which really pissed me off. And I had debated if I even wanted to address this or bring it up. Sometimes it feels like it's best to just ignore it, but this is one that just really bothered me, mostly because I'm somebody that has gone so far out of my way for years now to highlight smaller channels, to give smaller channels some attention, to collab and guest with smaller channels. I don't think there's anybody else in my, call it echelon of YouTube, like that 100 to 200,000 subscriber range that does what I do. I'm sure there are. I don't see it very often. And that's one of the reasons why I do it, is because it's a change that I would like to see. And so I'll just be the change that I want to see. So I don't give a shit if somebody's got 100 subscribers. If they're cool and they approach me, if they message me, if they got a cool idea for a video, if I have the time, I will happily dedicate my time to helping out somebody's channel, to guesting it, to, posting it on my channel and getting some attention over there, because I remember how hard it was when I started and there was nobody that wanted to help. And there's been so many times that I've seen creators with 10 times the subscribers that I have that could give a fuck about any of the up-and-comers. They've reached the fucking top of the mountain. Everybody else can struggle for air like they did. Whatever. Sink or swim, bitch. That's kind of what most people's attitudes seems to be, whether it's that harsh in reality or not. And so the fact that I have done that, and I've done it for so long, and that is something that I'm very proud of and is a big piece of what I consider my YouTube legacy or presence, whatever you want to call it, to have that not just called into question, but literally twisted to be the opposite. Like I'm just some fucking hungry shark out here trying to figure out cool ideas to take from smaller channels and take the glory for myself. I 100% resent that. I resent the fact that somebody said that about me. And it would be one thing if it was just some random person that nobody paid any attention to, but like fucking clockwork, every single time something like this happens, whether it be a YouTube comment or a fucking tweet or something else, where somebody has taken something that I've done or something that I've said and they've totally flipped it upside down to villainize me, it gets a bunch of different likes or a couple people chiming in with the comments saying like, oh my God, I didn't realize that or whatever. And now however many people saw and interacted with that comment, even the people that didn't actually click a button but just saw it and now that's in their head, now that's me. That's Cody Leach to them, is the asshole successful YouTuber that apes shit from all the smaller channels. And it fucking angers me that that is how it works around here. Like nobody ever bothers to actually do any research, click on my profile, search the videos, see what I actually said. It's just fucking random user 314 with a Michael Myers mask in his avatar said this, must be true. Now that guy's that. Now, because of that fact that nobody really likes to actually do the research and check the validity of things that they said, let's go to the tapes, shall we? I'm not confident enough to take credit for this theory. I did not see this theory anywhere until I posted it. And then suddenly a bunch of Dexter Twitter accounts that follow me started posting it as a fan theory and some other stuff. Nobody credited me. So it could have been that that theory was already being whispered about, or it could be that, you know, whatever. I said it, everybody else ran with it. Who knows? I'm not going to claim that it was my theory first. So for those watching at home that have zero fucking comprehension skills whatsoever, that is me quite literally saying that I'm pretty sure I did not come up with this theory. And I'm not confident whatsoever to be able to say that I came up with this theory. But I did see it get a lot more attention after I said it, which stands to reason, given that I have a big platform and there's a number of Dexter Twitter accounts, etc., that follow my channel. That's not me taking credit for the fucking idea. And what am I supposed to do? Scour the internet, scour through all the Reddit threads and the comment sections and everywhere and try to find the first person that ever mentioned Jonah Mitchell's name in the last 6 months and give them direct credit? What fucking sense does that make? Me acknowledging that I'm pretty sure I'm not the first person that said this should be enough for those of us with a brain in our skull. At one point, I did make a joke in the exact same video that if this theory ends up getting proven true by the end of this season, that in my own headcanon, I'm going to pretend like I came up with it. Yet that's literally me acknowledging the joke of it all, saying, obviously, this was not an idea that came from me, but selfishly, just to be a goof, I'm going to act like it was mine in my own head if it comes true. Like I'm going to give myself credit. That's not the same thing as taking credit publicly for an idea. Anyway, it just really bugged me. So if you're somebody that thought that or had things misconstrued for whatever reason, I do not claim that fucking idea as something that I created or I was the first person to draw the lines between. Logically, that makes no fucking sense. I didn't talk about it until halfway through the season was over. So we'll find out who the New York Ripper actually is. Hopefully it's a satisfying and a really badass reveal that leads to some great stuff for season 2, but we won't know until we get there. So let me know your guys' rankings down below, what your favorite and least favorite theories are, and we will wait with bated breath until episode 9 here in a couple of days, and then finally the finale of season 1 next week. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my Dexter coverage. I've reviewed every single season and the episodes individually of New Blood as well as Resurrection. I'm also going to put my ranking of the Dexter antagonists up here for you to check out. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.